Your attention is needed to understand every bit of information in this video. This isn't some random Alexander quote in speech. What you're about to hear are unpopular research opinions and words of Alexander the Great explained and simplified for average human to understand, comprehend, and execute. It took days of reads, deep research, criticisms, and practices to gather all the information in this video. Let me ask you something. What if everything you thought you knew about power, about greatness, about what it means to truly conquer your world was just the surface? History remembers Alexander the Great as the man who conquered the known world by age 32. They tell you about his battles, his empire, his legendary status. But here's what they don't tell you. They don't tell you about the night before his first major battle, when he didn't sleep, not because of fear, but because he was writing letters. Letters to his soldiers' families, memorizing their names, their stories, their reasons for fighting. They don't tell you about the moment he stood at the edge of the known world and wept, not from sadness, but from hunger so vast it terrified even him. They don't tell you about the 3 words he whispered to himself every single morning, words that would shape not just his destiny, but the destiny of millions. See, Alexander wasn't great because he won battles. Half the world has fought wars. He wasn't great because he was born a prince. History is littered with royal failures. Alexander was great because he understood something about the human mind, about psychology, about the nature of reality itself that most people will never grasp in 10 lifetimes. And today I'm going to show you 5 things about Alexander that historians whisper about but rarely explain. 5 principles so powerful, so dangerous, so transformative that if you truly understood them, if you truly applied them, your life would never be the same. But I'm warning you right now, these aren't feel-good platitudes. These aren't motivational slogans you'll forget by tomorrow. These are the actual operating principles of someone who looked at the impossible and made it kneel. So if you're here for comfortable lies, click away now. But if you're ready to understand what separates the conquerors from the conquered, the legends from the forgotten, stay with me. Because what you're about to discover will disturb you, challenge you, and possibly change everything you thought you knew about your own potential. Let's begin. Part 1. I am not afraid of an army of lions led by a sheep. I am afraid of an army of sheep led by a lion. It's 334 BCE. Alexander is just 22 years old. 22. An age when most of us are figuring out what we want to do with our lives, worrying about our careers, our relationships, whether we're on track. Alexander is standing on the banks of the Granicus River in modern-day Turkey, staring across at a Persian force that outnumbers his army. The Persian commanders are laughing. They've positioned themselves on the high ground. They have the advantage. They have the experience. They have every reason to believe this arrogant boy king is about to learn a brutal lesson. But here's what they didn't understand. Alexander's generals, seasoned warriors, men who'd fought alongside his father Philip, they approach him with a sensible plan. Wait until tomorrow. Let the enemy get tired. Cross the river at night. Play it safe. Every tactical manual ever written would agree with them. Every military strategist would call it prudent. And Alexander? He looks at these experienced generals, these men of wisdom and caution, and he says something that will echo through eternity. I am not afraid of an army of lions led by a sheep. I am afraid of an army of sheep led by a lion. Then he does something that makes absolutely no sense. He charges. Not tomorrow, not under cover of darkness, not with a clever flanking maneuver. Right there. Right then, uphill, against the current, into the teeth of the enemy. He personally leads the cavalry charge, making himself the primary target. The first spear thrown on that battlefield was aimed at him. The first sword raised was meant for his head. And you know what happens? His army, seeing their king, their 22-year-old commander, risking it all, fighting in the front line, refusing to ask them to do anything he wouldn't do first, they become unstoppable. Not because they were better trained than the Persians, not because they had superior weapons or numbers or position. They became unstoppable because the man leading them was a lion, and he transformed them from sheep into lions too. The Battle of Granicus was won in minutes. The Persians, with all their advantages, broke and ran. Because tactics don't win wars, weapons don't win wars, numbers don't win wars, leadership wins wars. Now, let me break this down for you, because this isn't just ancient history. This is about your life right now, today. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have you been the sheep, following other sheep, because of the person leading you, your boss, your parents, your teachers, even your own internal voice was also a sheep? Someone playing it safe, someone avoiding risk, someone who rather maintain comfort than pursue greatness. Here's what Alexander understood that most people will never will. The energy you bring to a situation literally transforms the situation itself. This isn't metaphysics. This isn't mysticism. This is quantum-level psychology. When Alexander charged that river, he wasn't just moving his body forward. He was making a declaration to the universe. I will not be denied. And his army felt it. The Persians felt it. The very molecules of the air felt it. You've experienced this yourself, even if you didn't recognize it. Think about a time when someone walked into a room, maybe a friend, maybe a teacher, maybe a stranger, and the entire energy shifted. Not because they said anything profound, not because they did anything dramatic, but because they carried themselves like a lion. Confidence is contagious. Courage is contagious. Conviction is contagious. And so is fear. So is doubt. So is mediocrity. You become the average of what you're exposed to. If you follow sheep, you'll think like sheep, act like sheep, and achieve sheep-level results. But if you position yourself around lions, or better yet, if you become the lion, everything changes. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but I'm not Alexander the Great. I'm not leading armies. I'm just trying to get through my day, my job, my life. And that's exactly the sheep talking.
Here's the revelation that will change everything if you let it. You are always leading an army, right now, today, this very moment. Your army is made up of your thoughts, your habits, your daily decisions, your repeated actions. Every single day, you either lead these internal forces like a lion, with clarity and courage and unwavering direction, or you let them wander like sheep, following whatever is easiest, whatever feels comfortable, whatever requires the least effort. When you wake up in the morning and your alarm goes off, that's your Granicus River moment. Do you charge forward into your day with purpose, or do you hit snooze, following the sheep voice that says, 5 more minutes won't hurt? When you're at the gym and your body is screaming to stop, that's your Granicus River moment. Do you push through, leading your physical army like a lion, or do you quit early, letting the sheep voice win? When you're in a meeting and you have an idea, an insight, something valuable to contribute, but you're scared of judgment, that's your Granicus River moment. Do you speak up with conviction, or do you stay silent, invisible, following the flock? Alexander's quote wasn't about actual lions and sheep. It was about the fundamental truth of human psychology. Your identity, who you believe yourself to be, is more powerful than your circumstances. If you see yourself as a sheep, you'll achieve sheep-level results no matter how talented you are, no matter what opportunities come your way. If you see yourself as a lion, you'll find a way to win, even when everything is stacked against you. Here's your practical application, your tactical takeaway. For the next 7 days, I want you to do this. Every morning, before you do anything else, I want you to ask yourself, am I leading my day like a lion or following it like a sheep? Before every important decision, before every challenging moment, before every opportunity to step up or shrink back, ask yourself, lion or sheep, what would the lion do? And here's the crucial part. Don't wait until you feel like a lion. Alexander didn't wait until he felt confident to charge that river. He charged the river, and the confidence came during the action. You don't find courage. You create courage through courageous action. You don't discover confidence. You build confidence through confident behavior. You don't become a lion by waiting to feel lion-like. You become a lion by acting lion-like, even when you feel terrified. I know this is hard. I know every part of you wants to play it safe, to wait, to prepare more, to avoid the risk. But here's what Alexander knew that changed everything. The only real risk is dying with your potential still trapped inside you. The Persians at Granicus were dangerous, but they weren't as dangerous as the regret Alexander would have felt if he'd played it safe and lost his chance at greatness. Your challenges are real. Your fears are valid. Your obstacles are substantial. But they're not as dangerous as the person you'll become if you keep following the flock. So decide right now. Are you leading an army of lions? Or are you just another sheep hoping someone else will save you? Because here's the thing about lions. They don't wait for permission. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They don't wait until they're ready. They charge. And the sheep become lions just by following them. But this was only Alexander's first secret. The next one? It's even more disturbing, even more powerful, and most people refuse to accept it because it destroys their comfortable excuses.
Let me tell you about the moment Alexander broke reality itself. It's 329 BCE. Alexander and his army are standing at the base of the Hindu Kush Mountains, some of the most brutal, unforgiving terrain on Earth. Winter is approaching. The passes are beginning to freeze. His advisors are telling him what any rational person would. This is suicide. We wait until spring. These mountains have killed armies before. The locals call them the killer of Hindus because of the countless lives they've claimed. The temperatures drop to minus 40 degrees. The oxygen is thin enough to kill. The paths are so narrow that one wrong step means a 1,000-foot fall to certain death. And Alexander? He looks at these mountains, these impossible, unconquerable mountains, and he says something that sounds absolutely insane. We cross now. Not in spring, not with better equipment, not after more planning. Now. In winter, with 40,000 men, thousands of horses, supply wagons, and equipment. His own men think he's lost his mind. These are warriors who followed him across Asia, who've won impossible battles, who trust him with their lives. And even they think this is suicide. But here's where it gets interesting. Alexander doesn't just order them to cross. He does something that reveals the deepest secret of his success, something that explains how a man could conquer the known world by 32. He walks.
No, you don't understand. He doesn't ride his horse. He doesn't sit in a comfortable carriage. He doesn't position himself in the protected middle of the calm where the commanders usually stay. He walks at the front, in the deepest snow, in the worst conditions where the danger is greatest. When his men are starving, he goes hungry too. When they're freezing, he refuses extra blankets. When they're suffering, he suffers first, and he suffers more. And you know what happens? They cross 40,000 men in winter through some of the most deadly terrain on earth. They lose men. They suffer. It's brutal beyond imagination. But they cross. And when they emerge on the other side, they're not the same army anymore. They're not even the same men. They've done something impossible. They have literally redefined what's achievable. They believed, just like Alexander's own advisors believed, that those mountains were impassable. Yet Alexander crushes them, not because of superior tactics or numbers, because his army now knows at a cellular level that the word impossible is just a suggestion. Now here's where this gets personal for you.
You have your own Hindu Kush, don't you? Maybe it's that business you want to start, but you keep finding reasons why now isn't the right time. Maybe it's that relationship you need to end, but you're afraid of being alone. Maybe it's that dream you've been carrying for years, but you've convinced yourself it's unrealistic. We all do this. We all create our own impossible mountains. And then we stand at the base, staring up, listing all the logical, rational, sensible reasons why we can't possibly cross. We wait for perfect conditions. We wait for more resources. We wait for the fear to go away. But here's what I need you to understand. Alexander's quote, "There is nothing impossible to him who will try," isn't about toxic positivity. It's not about pretending obstacles don't exist. It's not about ignoring reality. It's about something far more profound. Here's what Alexander understood that most people never grasp. The word impossible is always based on historical data. It's based on what hasn't been done yet, but historical data only tells you about the past, not about your future. Think about that. When people said it was impossible to cross the Hindu Kush in winter, they were technically correct. No army had ever done it. The historical data supported their claim. But historical data is just a record of human limitation up to that point. It's not a prophecy. It's not a law of physics. It's just what hasn't happened yet. Every single thing that seems normal to you now was once impossible. Flying, impossible, until it wasn't. Breaking the 4-minute mile, biologically impossible, until it wasn't. Connecting the entire world through instant communication, impossible, until it wasn't. The human brain has a bug, a glitch in its programming. It looks at the past and treats it as if it's a preview of the future. It sees what hasn't been done and concludes what can't be done. But Alexander's brain didn't have that bug. Or maybe he just reprogrammed it. When he looked at those mountains, he didn't see what was historically impossible. He saw what was potentially possible if someone was willing to suffer enough, risk enough, commit enough. Here's the practical truth you need to tattoo on your brain. The difference between impossible and possible is always just one person willing to try when everyone else has quit. Roger Bannister didn't break the 4-minute mile because he was genetically superior to everyone again before him. He broke it because he was willing to try what everyone else thought was impossible. Now, let me tell you the secret part of Alexander's quote that nobody talks about. There is nothing impossible to him who will try.
Not to him who wants to, not to him who wishes for it, not to him who thinks about it, to him who will try. You know what try means? Real try? It means you don't stop when it gets hard. It means you don't stop when people laugh. It means you don't stop when you fail the first time, or the 10th time, or the 100th time. Try means you keep going until either you succeed or you literally can't continue anymore. And even then, you rest and start again.
Most people don't actually try. They test, they dip their toe in, they give it a shot, they see how it goes. That's not trying. That's auditioning. Alexander didn't audition for greatness. He tried for it with every fiber of his being. Here's your uncomfortable truth for today. Most of your impossible is actually just, I haven't really tried yet. You haven't really tried to get in shape. You've started and stopped a dozen times. You haven't really tried to build that business. You've thought about it, researched it, planned it, but you haven't actually launched it. You haven't really tried to write that book. You've written a few pages, talked about it, but you haven't committed to the daily practice of writing. I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying this to free you. Because once you realize that your biggest obstacles are actually just places where you haven't really tried yet, everything changes. The mountain stops being impossible and starts being simply difficult. And difficult just means requires sustained effort. Here's what you do with this. Pick one thing in your life that you've labeled impossible or unrealistic. Just one. Maybe it's getting out of debt. Maybe it's learning a new skill. Maybe it's rebuilding a relationship. Maybe it's starting over in a new career. Now, I want you to ask yourself honestly, have I really tried? Not have I thought about it. Not have I wanted it. Have I tried? Real trying looks like this. You set a specific goal, you create a daily practice, you commit to that practice for a minimum of 90 days without stopping, without excuses, without exception. You track your progress, you adjust when something isn't working, but you don't quit. You accept that you'll fail along the way. You accept that it will be harder than you imagined. You accept that people will doubt you. And you keep going anyway. Because here's what Alexander proved on that mountain. Your potential isn't determined by your circumstances. It's determined by your willingness to suffer through the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Those mountains didn't get easier, the weather didn't improve, the conditions didn't change. Alexander and his men just decided that the suffering of crossing was less than the suffering of staying stuck. So let me ask you directly, what's your Hindu Kush? What's that one thing you've been avoiding because it seems too hard, too unlikely, too impossible? And more importantly, what kind of person will you become if you keep avoiding it? What will your life look like in 5 years if you keep standing at the base of that mountain waiting for conditions to be perfect? Alexander didn't become great by conquering easy terrain. He became great by looking at the impossible and saying, "Watch me." You have that same choice right now, today. Your mountains are waiting. They'll always be there. They'll always be difficult. The only question is, will you try? Really try? Or will you join the millions who stand at the base, listing reasons, waiting for spring, hoping for easier paths? But Alexander's next secret is the one that powerful people don't want you to know.
Because if you understand this principle, if you truly internalize it, you become almost impossible to control, impossible to manipulate, impossible to stop. Part 3. I would rather live a short life of glory than a long life of obscurity. Alexander died at 32 years old. 32! Let that sink in for a moment. By the time most people are just figuring out what they want to do with their lives, Alexander had already lived a full life, conquered the known world, and achieved immortality. But here's the disturbing part, the part that most historians gloss over because it's too uncomfortable, too challenging to our modern sensibilities. Alexander didn't die unexpectedly with unfinished business. He didn't die wishing he'd had more time. There's evidence, disputed, controversial, whispered about in academic circles, that Alexander may have known his body was failing, that he may have pushed himself so hard, burned so bright, that he consumed himself. And some scholars believe he didn't care, because he'd rather live 32 years of that, of glory, of conquest, of absolute self-actualization, than 90 years of comfortable mediocrity. Now, before we go further, I need to tell you something crucial. This is where it gets dangerous. This is where we enter territory that makes people uncomfortable. This is where you'll be tempted to dismiss what I'm about to say, to protect yourself from its implications. Because what Alexander understood about life, about time, about mortality, it's the kind of truth that once you see it, you can never unsee it. When Alexander said, "I would rather live a short life of glory than a long life of obscurity," he wasn't being dramatic. He wasn't trying to sound cool. He wasn't crafting a motivational quote. He was stating his operational philosophy, his actual worldview, the lens through which he made every single decision. And here's what most people miss. He didn't say this at the end of his life looking back. He said it as a young man looking forward. This was his plan. This was his choice. At 18, when his father Philip was assassinated and Alexander took the throne, he was faced with the same choice every human being faces. Play it safe and live long, or risk everything and live fully. He could have consolidated power in Macedonia. He could have maintained his father's empire. He could have lived to 80, died peacefully in his bed, then remembered as a decent king. Instead, he chose to burn. Now, I need you to really think about this because it's about to get personal. How are you spending your life? No, really, stop and think about it. How many of your days are you actually living versus just existing? Going through the motions, doing what's expected, playing it safe. I'm not judging you. I'm asking you to judge yourself, honestly. If you died tomorrow, and I know that's morbid, but stay with me, if you died tomorrow, would you look back on your life with satisfaction, with the feeling that you truly lived? Or would you look back with regret, with the nonsense that you played it too safe, that you protected your comfort more than you pursued your potential? Here's what we don't want to admit. Most of us are choosing a long life of obscurity. We're just not saying it out loud. We're choosing the safe job over the passionate pursuit. We're choosing the comfortable relationship over the transformative love. We're choosing the predictable path over the authentic adventure. And we tell ourselves it's responsible, it's mature, it's realistic. But what if it's just cowardice dressed up as wisdom? Here's Alexander's secret, the one that will either transform you or terrify you. You're dying anyway. Whether you live 32 years or 92 years, the end is the same. You get 0 days after your last day. Your comfort during those years buys you exactly nothing in the end. So the only real question is, what did you do with those years?
Did you burn bright? Did you attempt the impossible? Did you risk, dare, try, fail, get up and try again? Did you create something, build something, become someone? Or did you protect yourself, stay comfortable, avoid failure by avoiding ambition? Survive without ever truly living. Alexander understood something that modern society desperately tries to hide from you. Safety is an illusion. Security is an illusion. The only thing that's real is what you fully expressed yourself during your brief time here. You think you're playing it safe by avoiding risk? You're not. You're trading actual living for the illusion of security. You're trading glory for obscurity. And obscurity is its own kind of death. It's just slower and more painful. You know what's truly tragic? It's not dying young. It's dying at 80, having never truly lived. It's dying with your music still inside you, as the saying goes. Now, I can hear some of you right now, but that's reckless, that's irresponsible. What about planning for the future? What about security? What about my family? And that's a fair point. Let me be clear about what Alexander's philosophy does not mean. It doesn't mean being stupid. Alexander wasn't reckless. He was calculated in his risks. He studied, he planned, he prepared. It doesn't mean burning out or self-destructing. Alexander pushed hard, but he was also strategic about recovery.
The conditions will never be perfect. You will never feel ready. There will never be a better time than right now. Alexander didn't wait. At 20, he could have said, I'm too young. At 25, he could have said, I've done enough. At 30, he could have retired to comfort and luxury. Instead, he kept pushing, kept exploring, kept conquering, not just lands, but his own limitations. And yes, it killed him young. But here we are, 2,300 years later, still talking about him, still studying him, still inspired by him. How many people who played it safe in Alexander's time do you know by name? How many comfortable lives from 300 BCE do we remember? I'm not saying you need to conquer empires. I'm not saying you need to become famous or historically significant. I'm saying you need to live your version of glory, whatever that means for you. Maybe your glory is creating art that moves people. Maybe it's raising children who change the world. Maybe it's building a business that serves. Maybe it's mastering a craft. Maybe it's healing, teaching, inspiring, creating. Your glory is whatever makes you feel alive. Whatever makes you forget about time. Whatever you do even if you knew you'd die tomorrow. But here's what you cannot do. You cannot keep trading your days for a paycheck while your soul dies. You cannot keep maintaining relationships that drain you while time evaporates. You cannot keep postponing your real life while pursuing someone else's definition of success. I know this is hard to hear. I know part of you wants to close this video right now to go back to the comfortable numbness of routine. But that's exactly why you need to hear it. Because that impulse, that desire to avoid this truth, is the same impulse that will steal your entire life if you let it. Let me tell you what happens if you take Alexander's philosophy seriously. You'll make different choices. Starting today, starting right now. You'll quit that job that's killing your spirit. Maybe not tomorrow, but you'll start planning your exit. You'll start building your alternative. You'll have those difficult conversations you've been avoiding. You'll set those boundaries. You'll speak those truths. You'll start that project, write that book, launch that business, create that art, take that risk. Not because you're guaranteed to succeed, but because living fully, even if you fail, is infinitely better than dying slowly in the prison of safety. And here's what will happen. Some people won't understand. They'll call you reckless. They'll say you've changed. They'll project their own fears onto your choices. Let them. Because they're choosing obscurity and your glory makes them uncomfortable.
Your courage reminds them of their cowardice. Your aliveness highlights their numbness. But here's what you will also discover. When you start living for glory instead of comfort, you'll find your people. The other ones who are burning bright, the ones who understand that life is too short for small dreams. You'll form your own army of lion-hearted individuals who refuse to die without having truly lived. And yes, you might burn out faster. You might face more challenges. You might fail more publicly. But on your deathbed, and that day is coming whether you want to think about it or not, you're not going to be counting the years you survived. You'll be remembering the moments you lived, the risks you took, the people you loved fully, the dreams you chased, the impossibilities you attempted, the person you became in the pursuit. Alexander lived more in 32 years than most people live in 90. Not because he had more time, but because he understood that time is not measured in years. It's measured in intensity, in presence, in full-hearted engagement with life. You have the same choice he had. Long life of obscurity or short life of glory? Comfort or meaning? Survival or actual living? Choose glory. Choose to burn. Choose to live so fully that when your time comes, you'll have no regrets, only gratitude for the intensity of the experience. But if you think that's challenging, wait until you hear Alexander's fourth secret, because this one will completely flip your understanding of strength, of power, of what it actually means to be invincible. Remember, upon the conduct of each depends the fate of all. After the Battle of Gaugamela, one of the most decisive victories in military history, Alexander did something that confused his generals and shocked his enemies. He didn't celebrate. He didn't boast. He didn't parade through his camp accepting glory. He walked through the field hospital, visiting wounded soldiers, one by one, for hours. And he wasn't just making a political appearance. He wasn't just playing the role of concerned commander. He was memorizing names, asking about families, learning details, connecting. One of his officers, Ptolemy, recorded something strange. Alexander approached a young soldier, barely 20 years old, who'd lost his leg in the battle. The boy was crying. Not from pain, but from shame. He thought he'd failed. He thought he was useless now. And Alexander, the king, the conqueror, the man who had just defeated the Persian Empire, sat down in the blood and dirt next to this broken soldier and said something that would define his entire leadership philosophy. He said, "Remember, upon the conduct of each depends the fate of all." And then he explained to that wounded soldier exactly how his specific actions in the battle, the way he held his position, the way he protected his fellow soldiers, the courage he showed, had directly contributed to the victory. He made that young man understand that he wasn't just a small part of a big machine. He was essential, irreplaceable, vital. And here's what shocked everyone who witnessed it. Alexander meant it. He wasn't manipulating. He wasn't performing for the troops. He genuinely believed that every single person in his army, from the highest general to the lowest foot soldier, was critical to their success. Now, here's where this gets interesting for understanding why Alexander was different from every other conqueror in history. Most leaders throughout history have operated from a pyramid model that leader at the top is everything. Everyone else is expendable, replaceable, just resources to be used. Alexander operated from a completely different model. He saw his army and later his empire as an organism. Every cell matters. Every part is essential. The fate of all depends on the conduct of each. This wasn't just philosophy. This was practical strategy. In the Persian army, if you killed the king, the whole army collapsed. The entire power structure was built on one person. In Alexander's army, they fought harder when he was injured because he'd taught them that they weren't fighting for him. They were fighting with him as partners, as essential components of something greater. But the real genius of this principle wasn't military, it was psychological. You see, Alexander understood something about human potential that modern psychology is only now beginning to prove scientifically. When people believe they're essential, when they know their actions truly matter, they become capable of extraordinary things. It's called the Pygmalion effect, or self-fulfilling prophecy. When you treat people as if they're capable of greatness, they rise to meet that expectation. When you treat them as expendable, they perform at that level too. Alexander didn't just know this intellectually, he weaponized it. He turned it into an operational advantage. Now, let's talk about your life. Because you're not leading an ancient army, but you are leading something. Your team at work, your family, your friend group, or, most importantly, you're leading yourself, the different parts of your own psyche. And I want you to really think about this. How often do you operate from the pyramid model versus the organism model? When you're managing people at work, do you see them as replaceable resources or as essential parts of a greater mission? When you're parenting, do you treat your kids as subordinates who need to obey, or as essential partners in creating a thriving family? When you're in relationships, do you see your partner as someone who should serve your needs, or as an essential equal whose well-being is inseparable from your own? But here's where it gets really personal, really uncomfortable. How do you treat yourself? Most of us operate from a brutal internal hierarchy. We have parts of ourselves that we value, our productivity, our intelligence, or appearance, and parts we try to suppress or ignore, our fear, our sadness, our needs, our limitations. We treat parts of ourselves as expendable. I don't have time to rest. I can ignore this pain. This emotion is weak. I need to suppress it. This need is inconvenient. I'll push through. And then we wonder why we're exhausted, why we're anxious, why we feel fragmented and disconnected from ourselves. Here's Alexander's secret that applies to everything. Leadership, relationships, personal psychology, success in any domain. You cannot maximize the whole by minimizing the parts. Read that again. Let it sink in. You cannot build a powerful army by treating soldiers as expendable. You cannot build a thriving company by treating employees as replaceable cogs. You cannot build a loving family by treating members as less important than the family image. And you cannot build a powerful, resilient self by treating parts of your psyche as enemies to be conquered. Alexander's army was stronger than Persian forces that vastly outnumbered them because every single soldier knew they mattered, knew their conduct affected the fate of all, fought not from obligation but from genuine investment. The Persian soldiers, they were there because they had to be. They'd run if given the chance. They didn't care about the outcome beyond their personal survival. Now, translate this to your life. The parts of your life that you treat as essential will become strong. The parts you treat as expendable will sabotage you. If you treat your body as expendable, pushing through pain, ignoring sleep, eating garbage because you're too busy, your body will eventually sabotage your ambitions. It's not being difficult. It's being essential. If you treat your relationships as less important than your career, missing dinners, breaking promises, being physically present but mentally absent, those relationships will weaken precisely when you need them most. If you treat your emotions as inconvenient distractions, suppressing, ignoring, medicating them, they'll leak out in destructive ways. Anxiety, depression, burnout, rage. But here's the transformative part. When you start operating from the organism model, when you truly believe that upon the conduct of each depends the fate of all, everything changes. Let me show you what this looks like practically. In leadership, instead of saying, "Do this because I said so," you explain why it matters, how their specific contribution affects the whole. Instead of taking credit for success, you distribute it. You make sure every person understands their essential role. Instead of using fear to motivate, you use purpose. You help people see themselves as vital parts of something meaningful. In relationships, instead of keeping score, you operate from abundance. What's good for them is good for us. What's good for us is good for them. Instead of trying to change people, you recognize their essential nature and find how it contributes to the whole. Instead of saying, "I need you to be different," you ask, how can we honor both of our essential needs? And self-development. This is the big one. This is where Alexander's principle becomes revolutionary. Instead of going to war with yourself, hating your body, criticizing your emotions, fighting your limitations, you start asking, what is this part trying to tell me? What essential need is it protecting? Your anxiety isn't your enemy. It's your security system trying to keep you safe. It's essential. The question isn't, how do I eliminate anxiety? But what does my anxiety need to feel safe so we can move forward together? Your sadness isn't weakness. It's your emotional immune system processing loss so you can heal. It's essential. The question isn't, how do I stop being sad? But what am I grieving? What am I mourning? Your anger isn't bad. It's your boundary enforcement system telling you something important is being violated. It's essential. The question isn't, how do I stop being angry? But what boundary needs to be honored? When you stop treating parts of yourself as problems to be solved and start treating them as essential parts of your organism, you stop being at war with yourself. And when you're not at war with yourself, you have so much more energy for actually creating your life. I'll be honest with you. This is the hardest of Alexander's principles to implement because we've been trained to operate from the pyramid model, to rank things, to sacrifice some parts for other parts, to fight ourselves into submission. The organism model requires a completely different way of thinking. It requires you to slow down enough to listen to all the parts. It requires you to value things that don't immediately produce results. Rest, relationships, emotional processing, play. It requires you to trust that honoring all the essential parts will make you stronger, not weaker. Here's your practice for this principle. The essential parts inventory. Take out a piece of paper. Draw a circle. This represents your whole life, your whole self. Now, divide it into sections for all the parts. Work, health, relationships, creativity, rest, emotions, spirituality, whatever categories feel true for you. For each section, ask yourself this: am I treating this as essential or expendable? What would honoring this as essential look like? What is this part trying to protect or provide? Then, and this is crucial, pick one part you've been treating as expendable and commit to treating it as essential for the next 30 days. Maybe it's your health. You start prioritizing sleep like it's a business meeting. Maybe it's your relationships. You establish a weekly date night that's non-negotiable. Maybe it's your emotions. You start a 5-minute daily practice of just sitting with whatever you're feeling without trying to fix it. Maybe it's rest. You actually take your weekends off instead of working 7 days a week. Watch what happens when you start treating that expendable.
Alexander said, "For my part, I would rather not be remembered at all than be remembered for having done nothing." But here's what he actually meant, and this is crucial. He wasn't talking about legacy. He wasn't talking about history books. He wasn't talking about monuments. He was talking about the person he would become if he stopped growing. The person he'd see in the mirror if he settled for past achievements. The internal emptiness that comes from living in yesterday's glory. You see, Alexander understood something that modern psychology is only now confirming. Human beings don't actually fear death. We fear insignificance. We fear meaninglessness. We fear living without growing. We fear becoming irrelevant, to ourselves most of all. There's research now showing that the number one predictor of longevity isn't diet or exercise or genetics. It's purpose. It's having a reason to keep growing, contributing, mattering. People who retire without purpose die faster. People who stop challenging themselves decline rapidly. People who live in past accomplishments wither. Alexander knew this at 25. Most people never learn it. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever achieved something significant? Graduated, got a promotion, closed the deal, reached the goal, and then felt empty? Like there should be this massive satisfaction, this sense of, I made it. But instead there's just, what now? That's not depression. That's not ingratitude. That's not being broken. That's your psyche telling you something crucial. Achievement without growth is death in slow motion. We've been sold this lie, this toxic, soul-crushing lie, that there's a finish line, that there's an arrived state, that once you achieve X, you'll finally be happy, satisfied, complete. Get the degree, then you'll be set. Get the job, then you'll be satisfied. Get the promotion, then you'll be happy. Get the house, the partner, or the money, the status, then you'll finally feel complete. But then you get it, and there's a brief moment of celebration, and then nothing. Emptiness. Is this it? And we think something's wrong with us. We think we're broken, ungrateful, never satisfied. But Alexander would tell you, you're not broken. You're human. You're a growth organism. Stagnation feels like death because it is death, psychological death. Here's Alexander's final secret, the one that ties everything together. You're not trying to get somewhere. You're trying to become someone, and becoming never stops. Read that again. Let it destroy your old paradigm. Alexander didn't conquer the world to reach an endpoint. He conquered the world because conquering, the process of pushing beyond limits, the act of continuous becoming, was who he was. When he ran out of external worlds to conquer, he felt like he was dying because his essential nature, growth, had nowhere to express itself. And here's where this gets transformative for you. Every goal you're pursuing right now, the money, the status, the relationship, the achievement, these aren't the actual goal. They're contexts for growth, vehicles for becoming, excuses to push yourself beyond your current limitations. The goal isn't to have $1 million. The goal is to become the person capable of creating $1 million. The goal isn't to have a great relationship.
The goal is to become the person capable of sustaining deep intimacy. The goal isn't to have a successful business. The goal is to become the person capable of serving at scale. This changes everything. Because if the goal is the end point, you're always chasing, always unsatisfied, always feeling like you're not there yet. But if the goal is becoming, if the goal is the continuous growth itself, then you're always succeeding. Every challenge is a gift. Every obstacle is an opportunity. Every failure is feedback. You're not trying to arrive, you're trying to evolve. And evolution never ends. This is why so many successful people are miserable. They achieved their goals but forgot to keep growing. They arrived at the destination but didn't plan for what comes after. They thought the goal was to get, but the real goal is to become. And once you stop becoming, you start dying, even if your heart's still beating. So here's how you apply Alexander's final principle, the continuous growth protocol. First, you need to shift your entire relationship with achievement. Stop asking, when will I get there? Start asking, who am I becoming through this process? Second, you need to design your life around growth, not arrival. Stop setting, once I achieve X, I'll be happy goals. Start setting, this challenge will force me to grow in X way. Here's what this looks like practically. Let's say you want to build a business. The arrival mindset says, I want to make $100,000 this year. Once I hit that, I'll be successful. The growth mindset says, building this business will require me to develop discipline, learn marketing, face rejection, lead people, and manage uncertainty. Those capabilities aren't the actual goal. The $100,000 is just a measurement of growth. See the difference? In the first mindset, if you make $95K, you failed. You're disappointed. You're not enough. In the second mindset, if you make $95K, you celebrate the person you have to become to do it. You're grateful for the growth, and you're excited for the next phase of becoming. Let's say you want to get in shape. The arrival mindset says, I want to lose 30 pounds. Once I do, I'll be happy with my body. The growth mindset says, the process of getting fit will teach me discipline, consistency, discomfort tolerance, and self-respect. The body transformation is just the visible evidence of becoming a different person. In the arrival mindset, you might lose the weight through crash diets, hate every minute of it, and gained it all back because you never actually became a different person. In the growth mindset, you transform your identity. You become someone who values health, who shows up consistently, who does hard things. The weight loss is inevitable and permanent because it's a side effect of becoming. Here's the secret Alexander lived by. Every external goal is really an internal goal in disguise. You don't actually want the money. You want the security, freedom, and respect you think it provides, and you want to become the person capable of creating value at that level. You don't actually want the relationship. You want the love, connection, and growth that comes from being with someone who challenges and supports you. And you want to become the person capable of deep intimacy. You don't actually want the achievement. You want the pride, the meaning, the sense that you matter, and you want to become the person capable of significance. So stop chasing the external markers. Start pursuing the internal transformation. Ask yourself, what kind of person would I need to become to easily achieve my goals? What capabilities am I developing through this challenge? How is this obstacle growing me? Who am I becoming through this process? And here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop chasing outcomes and start embracing growth, the outcomes come faster and easier because you're no longer attached. You're no longer desperate. You're not trying to get something to feel complete. You're complete now because you're growing now. The achievements are just fun bonuses along the way. But I need to warn you about something. This path, the path of continuous growth, is not easier. In some ways, it's harder because you never get to rest on your laurels. You never get to say, I've done enough. You never get to stop and coast. Alexander couldn't stop conquering because that's what growth meant for him. When he ran out of external worlds to conquer, he felt like he was dying because his essential nature, growth, had nowhere to express itself. But here's what also is true. This is the only path that leads to genuine satisfaction. Not the satisfaction of arrival, but the satisfaction of being fully alive, fully engaged, fully becoming. The people who are most content in life aren't the ones who've achieved the most. They're the ones who are still growing, still contributing, still becoming more today than they were yesterday. Let me take all 5 of Alexander's principles together for you. Number 1, be the lion that transforms sheep into lions. Lead yourself and others with such conviction that you elevate everyone around you. Number 2, nothing is impossible to him who will try. Your limitations are just places you haven't really tried yet. Try, really try. Number 3, live a short life of glory rather than a long life of obscurity. Stop trading days for false security. Burn bright, live fully. Number 4, upon the conduct of each depends the fate of all. Stop fighting yourself. Every part is essential. Honor the whole. Number 5, be remembered for doing something, not nothing. You're not trying to arrive, you're trying to become. Growth is the goal. Alexander wasn't great because he was born special. He was born a prince, yes, but history is full of forgottennesses. He was great because he understood these principles about human psychology, about potential, about what it means to truly live. And then he had the courage to actually implement them, to actually live them, to actually become them. You have that same capacity. Not to conquer empires, we live in a different world now, but to conquer your own limitations. To become the lion, to attempt the impossible, to live fully.
Alexander gives you permission to be audacious, to be unreasonable, to refuse limitation, to become legendary in your own life. Not for others, for yourself. So that when you're lying on your deathbed, and that day is coming, you can look back without regret, without what-ifs, without the haunting knowledge that you had more inside you that never got expressed. I'll leave you with this. History remembers Alexander 2,300 years later, not because he won battles. Lots of people won battles. Not because he was rich. Lots of people were rich. Not because he was born privileged. Lots of people were born privileged. History remembers him because he became fully himself, completely, audaciously, unreasonably himself. He refused to shrink. He refused to play small. He refused to let the world tell him what was possible. And you have that same refusal available to you right now, today, this moment. The world will try to tame you, to make you reasonable, to convince you to settle, to teach you limitation. Refuse it. Be the lion. Attempt the impossible. Burn bright. Honor all your parts. Keep growing until you can't anymore. And when your time comes, whenever that is, you'll know you've truly lived. Alexander the Great conquered the known world by age 32 and died shortly after. But his true conquest wasn't geographic. It was psychological. He conquered the human tendency toward limitation, toward comfort, toward playing small. He proved that extraordinary isn't reserved for the chosen few. It's available to anyone willing to pay the price of continuous becoming. So now you know the 5 secrets, the 5 principles that transformed a 20-year-old prince into history's most legendary conqueror. But knowing isn't enough. Understanding isn't enough. Being inspired isn't enough. The only thing that matters is what you do with this information. Starting right now,
starting today. Don't wait until you feel ready. You won't. Don't wait until conditions are perfect. They won't be. Don't wait until you are confident. Confidence comes from action, not before it. Pick one of these 5 principles. Just one. The one that resonated most deeply with you. The one that made you most uncomfortable. The one you most want to avoid. That's usually the one you most need. And implement it today. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when you thought about it more. Today. If it's principle 1, be the lion. Make one decision today from your highest self, not your scared self. Lead your own internal army with conviction. Speak up in that meeting. Have that difficult conversation. Take that first step you've been avoiding. If it's principle 2, try the impossible. Identify one thing you've labeled impossible and commit to truly trying for 90 days. Not half trying, not testing, actually trying. Put it on your calendar. Make it non-negotiable. If it's principle 3, choose glory over comfort. Do one thing today that your comfortable self would never do. Something that makes you feel alive, even if it's scary. Call that person. Start that project. Make that change. If it's principle 4, honor all parts. Identify one part of yourself or your life you've been treating as expendable and treat it as essential today. Rest if you've been pushing too hard. Work if you've been avoiding. Feel if you've been numbing. And if it's principle 5, keep becoming. Shift one goal from an arrival mindset to a growth mindset. Change I want to achieve X to I want to become the person capable of X, and here's how this challenge will grow me. Look, I know this is a lot. I know it's intense. I know part of you wants to close this video, get distracted, and go back to comfortable numbness. That's fine. That's your choice. That's your life. But if you got this far, if you stayed with me through all of this, it's because something in you knows you're capable of more, knows you're meant for more, knows you're dying slowly in the prison of safety. Listen to that voice. Trust it. Follow it. Even if it scares you, especially if it scares you. You're not Alexander the Great. You're not conquering empires. You're not going to be in history books. But you are conquering your own limitations. You are building your own empire of capability, of character, of contribution. You are writing your own story. And the only question is, will it be a story worth telling? Will it be a story of someone who dared, who tried, who lived fully, who kept growing, who refused to shrink? Or will it be another story of comfort, of safety, of what if, and potential unrealized?
Alexander lived 2,300 years ago, but his principles are timeless because they're not about ancient warfare. They're about human psychology, about potential, about what it means to truly live. And they're available to you right now, this moment. So choose. Choose to be the lion. Choose to try the impossible. Choose glory over obscurity. Choose to honor all your parts. Choose continuous becoming over arrival. Choose to live. Because at the end of your life, and that day is coming, you won't remember the days you played it safe. You'll remember the days you were alive. Be alive. Starting now.
There is nothing impossible to him who will try. Alexander the Great. What will you try?